Across America, millions gather annually at healing services. Hands are laid on the sick, prayers are spoken, and hope fills the room like electricity. You can feel the fervent expectation. But here's a difficult question, one rarely asked within our faith communities. What truly happens when healing doesn't come? What transpires after the music fades, the lights dim, and the charismatic speaker leaves town? What happens when the crowd disperses and you are left alone with your unchanged reality, your persistent illness, or your enduring pain? Tonight, we are not here to undermine faith or attack belief in divine intervention. Instead, we are compelled by a deeper spiritual calling to ask, what are the profound, often devastating consequences when faith healing fails? And why does our silence on this matter persist? Faith healing possesses incredibly deep roots within American Christianity. From the passionate tent revivals of the 19th century to the meticulously produced megachurch events of today, the conviction that God can directly heal the sick has remained a powerful force across generations. It is undeniably woven into the very fabric of our religious life. Yet, a critical flaw exists in how these narratives are typically presented. Healing stories are almost exclusively told from one perspective, the success story. We are inundated with testimonies of miracles, dramatic turnarounds, and instantaneous cures. But tonight, we must courageously ask a different, more challenging question. What about the stories that do not culminate in miracles? What about the countless individuals who stepped forward for prayer, who believed with every fiber of their being, and who returned home still burdened by their ailments? These stories are not merely footnotes. They are central to a complete and honest understanding of faith, and they demand to be heard and acknowledged within our congregations. Faith healing taps into something profoundly universal in the human experience, the desperate yearning for hope. For those grappling with chronic illness, living with disability, or facing a terminal diagnosis, conventional medical options can often feel agonizingly limited. While modern medicine is a miraculous gift, it possesses inherent boundaries. There are limits to what even the most skilled doctors can achieve. In those moments when medical science reaches its frontier, faith offers a powerful alternative. It provides meaning amidst suffering, fosters a sense of community and support, and, crucially, presents the possibility of direct divine intervention. The belief that God might reach down and accomplish what medicine cannot. The biblical directive in James the 5:14, "Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them," underscores the ancient and enduring nature of divine healing. This belief is not a modern invention. It dates back to the earliest days of Christianity. The practice itself is deeply emotional and profoundly meaningful for millions of believers. However, here is the critical point we must grasp. Belief alone does not automatically guarantee a specific outcome. Sincerity, no matter how profound, does not inherently produce miracles. This stark reality creates incredibly complicated and often painful situations that we, as people of faith, have a moral obligation to discuss with honesty and compassion. Across the United States, former attendees of healing services quietly share remarkably similar experiences, often years after the initial event. They were prayed for, sometimes repeatedly. They were frequently assured that healing had already commenced, that they simply needed to patiently await its physical manifestation. They were exhorted to claim their healing, to speak it into existence, to act as if they were already cured, even when their symptoms stubbornly persisted. But then weeks turned into months and nothing changed. The condition remained the same, or tragically, even worsened. This is where the experience becomes truly agonizing. Sometimes the blame for the non-healing is cruelly turned inward. These vulnerable individuals are told, "You didn't have enough faith. That's why you're still sick." Or, "You harbored doubt, and doubt obstructs the miracle." Or even more devastatingly, "There must be unconfessed sin in your life preventing God from healing you." Consequently, not only are they still contending with their illness, but they are now also burdened with immense shame and spiritual guilt, internalizing the belief that their continued suffering is somehow their own personal failing. This raises a profoundly difficult question that demands an answer. When healing does not occur, who truly bears the burden? Is it God who seemingly chose not to heal? Is it the healer who perhaps made promises they could not fulfill? Or is it the believer who is then accused of lacking sufficient faith? This question carries immense spiritual and emotional weight. Most American churches will officially state their support for medical care. They will advise their congregants to consult doctors and adhere to prescribed medications. However, a significant and dangerous conflict often arises when healing services explicitly or implicitly suggest that medicine is somehow unnecessary, or that it represents a lesser option for those who possess true faith. The subtle or sometimes overt message can be that medical treatment is what one resorts to when their trust in God is insufficient. We have seen heartbreaking instances where families have delayed crucial medical treatment because they were instructed to trust God first and only consider medicine if prayer demonstrably failed. Others have tragically ceased taking vital medications after attending healing services, genuinely believing they were cured and no longer required them. Many of these families now carry the profound regret of those decisions, having witnessed devastating consequences. Proverbs 27:12 wisely states, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." This ancient wisdom implies that true discernment involves recognizing genuine threats and taking appropriate, responsible action to protect oneself and one's loved ones. Where, then, is the precise line between exercising profound faith and fulfilling basic human responsibility? Can one genuinely believe in God's power to heal while simultaneously seeking medical intervention? Should one? These are not abstract theological debates. They are questions that directly impact real medical decisions with life-altering consequences. Different churches and different spiritual leaders offer vastly divergent answers, leaving many believers in a state of confusion and vulnerability. Successful healings are invariably celebrated from the pulpit and the stage. Individuals offer glowing testimonies. Videos are widely shared online. The entire community rejoices in unison. But failures? These are almost never addressed publicly. Why does this pervasive silence exist? There are several compelling yet troubling reasons. There is the understandable fear of discouraging others who are still clinging to hope for their own miracles. There is immense pressure to protect God's reputation, as if admitting that healing did not occur somehow diminishes God's power or goodness. There is genuine social shame. The crushing feeling that one's continued illness marks them as spiritually inferior or deficient. And, perhaps most critically, there is the very real risk of ostracization, or even losing one's church community if one dares to ask uncomfortable questions or express doubts about the efficacy of a healing ministry. So, what do many people do in response to this pressure? They quietly withdraw. They cease attending healing services, or they may even leave the church entirely, but they rarely speak out publicly about their experiences. They wish to avoid causing problems or being perceived as faithless, bitter, or divisive. This leads us to another crucial question. Does this enforced silence genuinely protect faith? Or does it, in fact, prevent much-needed accountability within our spiritual leadership? Does refusing to acknowledge failures truly serve the church's best interests more than it serves the vulnerable individuals who are genuinely seeking truth and healing? Because when only success stories are permitted to be told, it creates a profoundly skewed and unrealistic picture of reality, one that inevitably sets people up for deep disappointment, spiritual crisis, and even profound disillusionment with their faith. It is important to acknowledge that not all faith healers claim perfection or guarantee specific results. Some are quite transparent, stating that healing is ultimately unpredictable, that they are merely praying and trusting God to act according to His will, and that they cannot control the outcomes. These healers tend to be more cautious with their language and their promises, fostering a more realistic expectation. However, others exhibit far greater confidence, sometimes claiming near-perfect success rates, asserting that healing is always available if people will simply receive it, and guaranteeing that God desires everyone to be healed instantaneously. when actual outcomes consistently fail to align with these kinds of absolute promises. The question of responsibility becomes incredibly murky and ethically problematic. Is faith healing primarily intended to inspire hope and offer encouragement during difficult times? Or is it meant to promise specific, tangible, and verifiable results that people can unequivocally count on? These two objectives are fundamentally distinct. Matthew 7:16 instructs us, "By their fruit you will recognize them." Jesus is teaching us to evaluate leaders and teachers not merely by their eloquent claims, but by the actual observable results they produce. So, what fruit matters more in evaluating a healing ministry? The perceived level of belief and sincerity, or the actual measurable outcomes in the lives of those prayed for? Should we judge healers by the sheer confidence of their pronouncements, or by what genuinely happens to the people for whom they pray? These are not easy questions, but they are absolutely essential for spiritual integrity and responsible leadership. Many American Christians successfully practice both prayer and medicine without perceiving any inherent conflict between them. They do not view it as an either-or proposition, but rather a both-and approach. They pray fervently for God's strength, comfort, and wisdom while diligently seeking medical treatment. They trust God for peace and meaning in their suffering while simultaneously trusting medical professionals for physical care and expertise. They do not believe that utilizing medicine signifies a lack of faith, nor do they believe that praying means they should reject sound medical assistance. Perhaps the more profound question we should be asking isn't whether faith can heal. Many individuals genuinely believe they have experienced divine healing, and we need not dispute their personal testimonies. Perhaps the more critical inquiry is, how does faith respond when physical healing does not come? Does faith only possess value if it produces tangible miracles? Or does faith serve other, equally vital purposes, providing profound comfort, building spiritual resilience, creating deep meaning, connecting us to a supportive community, and drawing us closer to God? Even when our physical circumstances remain unchanged, this might be the more crucial and spiritually enriching conversation for our faith communities to embrace. So let me leave you with some vital questions for personal and communal reflection. If a physical miracle does not occur, does that automatically signify a failure of faith? Or does faith serve a broader, more encompassing purpose beyond merely producing physical healing? And should our churches be courageously telling both sides of the healing story? Not just the celebrated successes, but also the profound silences, the crushing disappointments, and the countless times when people prayed with all their hearts and nothing outwardly changed? Would such honesty actually make our faith communities more authentic and trustworthy? Would it, in fact, strengthen faith by grounding it in a more complete and compassionate understanding of reality? Or would it undermine hope in ways that ultimately cause more harm than good? These are genuine, complex questions without simplistic answers, and they deserve our thoughtful, prayerful consideration. Faith has been the bedrock that has carried Americans through unimaginable pain and adversity for generations. It has consistently provided comfort, meaning, and community in the darkest of times. But a truly honest and mature faith is never afraid to ask hard questions, especially when deeply held expectations collide with the often unyielding realities of life, and when things do not unfold as we had fervently hoped. There are no accusations here, and no final, definitive conclusions offered. Only stories that are profoundly worth hearing and questions that demand our most honest and compassionate answers. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. We invite you to subscribe, share your thoughtful reflections in the comments below, and join us in this ongoing, vital search for truth and spiritual integrity.